Okay, so the first key question from Unit 3 that I want to look at here is around leading and leadership styles. So remember, management skills are leading, motivating, communicating. As far as leaving Cert business goes, they're management skills and nothing else, right? They're the three that we study. So if you look in the notes there, remember the notes you'll find in the link. The link to the notes is in the description for the video, right? So on page 139, if you look at the top there, you will see that I think leading is important because it comes up a lot. 55% of the exam papers in the 10-year period between 2012 and 2022 saw a question on leading. However, it wasn't on last year's paper. And motivation came up for a really chunky 40 marks last year. It was a part A and part B to a question. So that makes me think that if they're going to ask about management skills, maybe it's more likely they'll look away from that because they really assessed motivation hard last year. So maybe leadership or communicating are more likely, particularly communicating for that question 5, I think. It obviously has ABQ potential as well, but yeah, maybe it's more means they're more inclined to go for leading. Where could you see it in your exam? It could be a short question, has come up before in certain ways. Short questions could be part of question 5, which is the first question in part B of the long questions, which is usually a question on unit 2/3. But what could happen this year is the full question on unit 3 because unit 2 is short and they're using a part of it for the ABQ. Or you could see it as part of the ABQ as we did previously in 2020. I think 2020 was the one we mentioned in the trend, the ABQ Unit 3 trend video, that they asked about management styles rather than leadership styles or motivational style. So, and they left it open to kind of talk about either. So it has happened in the past. What you need to know, you need to be able to state and explain the 3 styles. Crucially, you need to be able to explain the styles with 2 points of keyword info. As with anything in the course, I would know the advantages and disadvantages. So really there we're talking about knowing when they're appropriate to use. And you know what, if you're short on points and theory and keywords, you can drop them in as a second point of development if it was the ABQ or something like that. And know when they're appropriate and how change is managed using the different leadership styles. So when they're appropriate, how change is managed is sort of the same thing. You could also be asked what are the factors that influence the chosen leadership style. But again, if you know when each is appropriate, you can kind of answer that, right? Sometimes they'll ask you to apply leadership style to a particular business, so just look out for that in the marking scheme. So let's have a look then at our leadership styles and our keyword grid. So remember, the idea here is that you might print off the next page and write in the keywords in here as we go, or you could replicate what's here on your, just take out a sheet of paper, a mini whiteboard, and write and rewrite the keywords until they become memory, until they're etched into your brain, and then go and try the practice questions. That is the idea here. That's the idea with all these videos. So as I work through the keywords and explain what you need to get marks, you can pause, replay, take advantage of the fact it's video. This whole learning process has been designed so that video notes work together and that you interact and follow the process. So write the keywords, keep rewriting them, practice them, go and do the question against the clock, pause the video while that's happening, come back and watch the remainder of the video where I walk you through the marking scheme. That's the idea here, right? So first leadership style we have is autocratic. So crucial things to say here, this is where the leader gives instructions and they make decisions with no consultation from staff. So they will give instructions to staff and they make decisions with no consultation. So that's how change is management. That's how change is managed. They don't consult staff. The leader will use threats and bribes as a motivator. So they use threats and bribes to motivate. So they give instructions, make decisions with no consultation. So that's how change is managed. And they will use threats and bribes as a motivator. When is this appropriate? When you've got to make quick decisions. So if there's an emergency situation, let's say you've got a faulty or a harmful product out there that you need to recall, you haven't got time to take the feedback or the ideas of all the staff, you've got to get it done. So quick decision is needed. Autocratic works in that particular scenario. Also works well when you're dealing with low skilled staff who might have little job attachment. They need the guidance, they need the direction, they need to be monitored closely and given instruction and direction. So if you're dealing with low skilled staff, maybe staff on a production line or an assembly line or something like that, they might need an autocratic leadership. They don't want, so it could be the case that they don't want to have an input into the decision-making process or the change process because they have little job attachment. Maybe they're not. It could be part-time staff, or it could be staff that are there for the summer or something like that. And they would favor an autocratic style themselves. Democratic is the next one. So the leader will share decision-making with staff and consult employees when making changes. And really nice thing to add in, they will delegate work. So share decision-making, and they will consult employees when making decisions or changes, and work is delegated. So works well. The best thing to use here as an example is a business that uses teamwork. This is the one that's always in the marketing scheme. So most modern business will use teamwork because it creates a bond between staff and management. But any business that uses teamwork, any big international business, so LinkedIn, Vodafone, that type of business that use teamwork. Then the next one there is laissez-faire. So key things to say there. This comes about. This leadership style works where you have a huge trust in your staff and the leader wants to facilitate work rather than to supervise it. So this is kind of the far end of the spectrum to autocratic. This works really well when employees are experts. They are highly skilled in their roles. So the factors then that are affecting the chosen style. So the staff ability to affect decision is one. If they have little ability to affect the outcome, well, then there's no point consulting them. So maybe autocratic works best. So yeah, there's only a point in actually asking them if their opinion is going to actually impact the outcome. So if you've got an emergency situation and you know that you need to recall a product that is actually harming consumers, like asking the staff, should you recall it or not? They're going to say that you should, so you don't need to ask them. So go ahead and do it, right? And the type of employee is the next thing. So we've seen that. So we've seen that unskilled with little attachment, autocratic works well. If they're experts, laissez-faire works better, right? The time frame for making decisions. So if you need a quick decision, autocratic works well. But if you have time to consult the staff, maybe democratic or laissez-faire works better. The complexity of the work matters. So we saw that if you're dealing with experts, where work's quite complex, laissez-faire works. But if you're dealing with workers who are lowly skilled and have little job attachment, autocratic might be a better approach. And then the corporate culture is the last point. If you're a modern business that uses teamwork, well then a democratic approach might be the best one there. So practice writing those keywords associated with each leadership style, then come down and do this question here. So we have a 20-mark question, divide by 2.5, give yourself 8 minutes to do it, and come back and watch the rest of the video where I take you through the marketing scheme, which I'm going to get into now, right? So the question is outline two leadership styles, or two styles of leadership, and illustrate how each of these styles may be appropriate in different business situations. So let's just break this question up a little bit here. So I'm going to box the verb here. So outline is generally just a state and explain verb. I'm going to underline the key bits. So two leadership styles. We have another verb, so I'm going to box it and illustrate how each of these styles may be appropriate in different business situations. So we've got to outline two styles, and then I've got to give an example to illustrate how they're appropriate in different business situations. So it is a 20-mark question there. We've got to give two leadership styles, and those leadership styles, there's 10 marks each for them. So you've got to state the leadership style for 2 marks, explain it using keywords, explain it again using more keywords. So this is your kind of your theory or your textbook knowledge, those 6 marks. And then 2 marks for that link or example of a business situation. So let's go down and look at the marketing scheme here in a sample answer. So you get out to page 142. So all 3 are given here. Remember, you don't need to give all 3. The question's only looking for 2. So let's say that you said autocratic, 2 marks for identifying that as a leadership style. Then you need 2 sentences of keyword info at 3 marks each. So a leader who likes to be in control, they do not delegate work to subordinates. That'll be good enough for 3 marks. They don't engage or they don't consult staff on making decisions. They use fear and bribes or threats as motivators. 3 kind of things there that you could use to get the 2 banks to 3 marks. So there's different routes to it. So you probably get 3 marks for saying they don't delegate, 3 marks for no consultation, or you could have gone in the route of saying they use fear and threats or bribes as motivators as well. It's just another way you could have gone about it. So that's 8 of the 10 marks. Then you need your example. So this style of leadership, it is appropriate when dealing with unskilled staff with little job attachment, like workers on a production line doing monotonous tasks. So there's your example. So 10 out of 10 there. Next one, then you could have said democratic. Opinions and feedbacks are sought, so they are consulted. Staff feel valued and motivated, but crucially, there is delegation. So the authority to complete tasks is delegated to staff. So opinions and feedback are sought, so there's consultation and there is delegation. So it works well, remember, focus on teamwork and staff involvement. So business that uses teamwork. Always associate democratic with teamwork. So example there, yeah, Vodafone or LinkedIn would be just, it's good to drop in an actual company. And then laissez-faire, the last one, comes when there's huge trust in staff by the manager. They want to facilitate the work rather than supervise it. And they might give staff the freedom to best decide how they're going to complete the work that's set for them. Works well as an example then when you're managing experts. So tech companies, for example, just let them work away and try and achieve the goals or the aims of business in the way that they see fit or the way that they think works best. So you're not constantly interfering and supervising, you're trusting them to go and do it the best way possible. So you didn't need all 3, 2 would have been fine. You have another question to practice on the next page, so you can pause the video and do this one as well. So describe 2 leadership styles. So state, explain again, and then outline the factors that influence the leadership style adopted by business managers. Provide examples. I just want to go down and look at the marking scheme for that quickly. So you see how this kind of links. If you know when each one is appropriate, you kind of know the answer to this question. So the first thing that might affect leadership styles is how quick you've got to make the decision. So remember, if you've got to do something quickly, and crucially the decision won't change the result, well then autocratic would work best. We saw that the type of employee matters. So if you're dealing with low skill employees, well then, or employees on an assembly or production line, well then autocratic might work best. If you're dealing with experts, well then laissez-faire might work best. The time frame is important. If you need a fast decision, autocratic works best. If you're dealing with a complex task or really skilled employees, well then laissez-faire might work best. The corporate culture is important. So if it's one that wants to have a good relationship between staff and management and uses teamwork, well then democratic works best. So I would drop in probably what works best in the various situations there. But you can see once you know when each are appropriate, you can easily deal with a question like that.